Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the AmandaFest podcast, where our intention is simple. It is to inspire and empower you to take aligned action towards your dream life, whatever that looks like for you. I have a really special guest for you guys today. We're going to give her a little bit of an extended intro because she deserves it. This is Mace Curran. She is the literal definition of badass. With 13 years as a fighter pilot, she made history as the second woman ever to fly lead solo for the Thunderbirds, performing for millions of fans worldwide. Now, she's all about helping people overcome fear and self-doubt, working with companies like Microsoft and SpaceX, all to inspire action. She's also an author of children's books and hundreds of articles helping people to reach their full potential. Today, we are going to talk all about how she took aligned action to step into her dream reality. We're going to be talking about starting before you're ready, turning vulnerability into possibility, and overcoming fear and self-doubt. So as we've done with every episode, before we dive into this juicy conversation, we're just going to take a quick moment to ground down. We're going to take some breaths, get clear, get present in the here and now. If it's safe to do so, I invite you to close down your eyes. I always like to put a hand on my heart and one on my belly, just to connect to my body, remind myself that I'm here. We're going to take some nice deep breaths in through our nose and out through our mouth. And on our inhale through our nose, we're going to set an intention for this next hour together. Think of something that you want to call in, something you want to be filled up with, whether it's a feeling, an emotion, whatever it is. We're going to call that in with the breath. And on the exhale, we're going to think of something we're ready to let go of. Again, that could be physical, emotional, mental, whatever it might be. We're going to take 3 cleansing breaths together. So a nice deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Feel free to make some noise on that exhale, really letting go. Nice deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And last one, make it count. Nice deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Feel free to shake it out. Again, make some noise. Work out any kinks in your neck, in your arms, wherever you're holding on to tension. We are here and present. Welcome to AmandaFest. Welcome, Mace.
I want to start every podcast like that. I feel so relaxed and ready.
Isn't it nice? I started it kind of selfishly because I was like, sometimes, you're running around, it's in the middle of the day, and I'm just like, I really want to be present for these conversations, and I really want my guests to be present. And I really want my listeners to be present too.
No, that's so true. And one of the things I love about being on podcasts is that you get to go into this long form conversation and really dive into things. But you're right. I literally just came from another call right before this. And I was like running to use the bathroom and fill up my water bottle and find the email and get on the link. And yeah, so that was nice. That was a good transition.
Yeah, well, I'm so happy to have you. I always love to start off talking a little bit about our connection point. We were starting to chat about it before the podcast.
I feel like our areas of expertise kind of overlapped in a lot of strange ways. Obviously, your background in the entertainment space with like dabbling in aviation focused films.
And most people that listen to this podcast, unless they listen to my episode where I talk about my Hollywood life, they don't even know that part of my world, which is hilarious to me.
Right, which really casual. I mean, obviously fairly successful movies around aviation, like some of the most successful. So I get asked about that stuff constantly, about the accuracy. Is such like a pop culture phenomenon.
So
That
for those of you guys who don't know, before in my previous life, I worked for an actor who was very focused in aviation films. I worked on Top Gun. I worked on a film called Devotion. And we also worked on a Blue Angels documentary. So when Mace came into my world and I was like, oh, she's in the speaker space. She's also an ex-fighter pilot. She's also, and I was like, okay, we are so aligned in so many ways.
Yeah, in the Blue Angels documentary, the team that was part of that documentary, they were on the Blue Angels at the same time I was on the Thunderbirds, so I know
Right.
all of them. So I went and saw that in IMAX last year when it came out, and it was so fun because I was like, "Those are my friends." And it was fun to see, like, how the story was told and what parts were highlighted, and it's just so unique because we're living the same parallel life in the Air Force version as they are. We do the exact same thing with the same mission, just different branches of the service, different aircraft. But yeah, there's so much odd, like, overlap there. And then at one point, you were considering moving to Vegas, which is where I still live, which is where the Thunderbirds
Yeah.
are based. And we thought we might be working together at an agency. So I thought we might be working together day to day on my speaking and writing and all the stuff I do now. That didn't end up happening. But then I
But
was
we
coming to
ended
New
up
York
staying in
City.
touch. Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought, you were in New York on Instagram. You're like, "Oh, we should meet up." That didn't end up happening because you were out of town.
And then I almost came to Vegas because I was gonna go to a show at the Sphere, and then that
Yep,
didn't happen. And
yep,
then we were like, okay, so this is technically everybody our first time speaking face to face,
yep,
though we've been basically DMing and in communication for almost like, I don't know, more than 6 months, like
yeah.
almost a year maybe.
And I feel like we've passed in the night in the air on commercial flights a whole bunch of times. And I was like, "We
Yeah,
surely should connect. There's a lot going on here."
100%. Well, I'd love to hear a little bit about your story of like how you got involved with the Thunderbirds and what that looked like for you. But I'm particularly so interested in the pivot that you made from doing the Thunderbirds to now you're using your platform, you're using your voice to speak and to share all of the wisdom and all of the messages and everything that you learned through this one experience. And you're like, okay, new mission, help the world.
Yeah, I mean, that pretty much sums it up. And I like that you want to focus on that part because so often we get really focused on the Thunderbird portion because that is such a fascinating thing and an impressive thing. And it's what I'm known for, and a lot of notoriety comes with that.
Yeah.
But I really love what I'm doing now. I mean, I left what most people consider a dream career and a dream job by choice because it felt like what I was supposed to go do. And I love it. And it feels so fulfilling. I mean, you talk about alignment. I don't have the Sunday scaries. I get to choose who I work with and what it looks like and have creative control. And it just feels so good. I work maybe even more hours than I did on the Thunderbirds because I'm constantly thinking about it. I'm working on the weekends, even at night, I'll be working on something, but it doesn't feel like work a lot of the time.
Totally.
It's awesome. But yeah, to give people an idea because maybe your audience isn't read in on the military and
Probably
fighter
not.
jet demonstration teams and all the things. So I was in the military and the Air Force on active duty for 13 years. I did Air Force ROTC, which basically means you go to college as a college student, but you're also doing military classes. And I was lucky enough to be on a scholarship. So they paid for my entire education, but that meant that I owed them a service commitment. Normally that would be 4 years, but halfway through college, I was a criminal justice major, planning on being an FBI agent. But halfway through college, I saw two jets take off up close, full afterburner, while we were visiting a base. And again, I kind of had one of those moments where I was just like, I want to go do that.
Yeah.
Full goosebumps. Holy crap. I know this wasn't the plan, but we're going to change the plan.
Pivot.
So we made a pivot. Yeah. And so I graduated with a criminal justice degree, but in the Air Force, you don't have to have some specific degree to be a pilot. They kind of base your competitiveness based on your GPA, your physical fitness, your leadership in the cadet wing, all these factors. So I got a pilot slot. Long story short, I went to pilot training, very competitive to get a fighter aircraft. Ended up getting one. To put it in perspective, I was in a class of 25 people and two fighter aircraft were available. So I got one of
Wow.
those. Odds were not in my favor, but somehow worked my butt off, made it happen. And that was the F-16. So the next 6 or 7 years, I spent learning to fly that aircraft, flying in combat squadrons. So a gray painted F-16, deployed to Afghanistan, lived in Japan for 3 years, flew all over the world, spent a summer in Poland flying with their pilot.
What was the ratio of men to women in this space? Just for like
Perspective.
reference. Yeah.
Yeah. When I entered the Air Force, 2% of fighter pilots were women. When I
Wow.
left 3 years ago, about 4% were female.
I have like chills up my body right now.
So, usually I was the only one in my unit. Occasionally, there were 2 of us.
Okay.
There were never more than 2 in any squadron or class I was part of. Um, yeah, you kinda got used to it, but it was definitely a thing. And oddly enough, this weekend, I'm going to meet up with 2 women who are stationed in Japan at the same time as me, and, like, one of them I haven't seen in a decade,
Wow.
and the other one I just saw a week ago, but before that, I hadn't seen her in, I don't know, 5, 6 years, and the 3 of us are meeting up for a girls' weekend. So,
So
you create really
fun.
strong bonds when
Yeah.
there's not very many of you, but that was a side note. So, I do all that, fighter pilot focused on tactics, defending the country, all of that stuff. That assignment in Texas, where I spent 3 years, is coming to an end, and I see an email that Thunderbirds are hiring. To become a Thunderbird pilot, you already have to be an experienced fighter pilot.
Right.
The Thunderbirds fly F-16s, the same jet that I had been flying. You don't have to necessarily be an F-16 pilot, but some sort of fighter pilot in the Air Force. There's some other fighter jets the Air Force flies, F-22s, F-15s. I applied. It was something that I had always been intrigued by, and I thought the mission was really cool because you really get to have a cool impact on people. You get to connect with kids in a really cool way. You get to do this inspirational mission that you just don't get to really do.
Is the Thunderbirds more performance based than
Yes.
what you were doing?
Yes, so for people that just have no context at all,
Yeah. Yeah.
a combat squadron, their whole focus is tactics, defending the country, deploying, studying our adversaries, what you really imagine the military doing. The Thunderbirds, Air Force, Blue Angels, Navy, sometimes people are familiar with one and not the other, do the same mission, just different branches. Our mission in Thunderbirds was to recruit, retain, and inspire. And so we would go 9 months of the year, almost like a professional sports team or a band on tour. We would travel all over the country. Every weekend, we would be in a different city, flying air shows, doing a aerial demonstration to put these jets and this team in front of the American public.
Right.
And for a few reasons, right? To show people what their taxpayers' dollars are going to. For people that have no connection with the military, that might be their only opportunity to really see just the sheer strength. Like, the jets are really
Right.
impressive up close. It's insane.
I grew up going to the Air and Sea shows in Miami before I ever like actually got up close and personal through work. I remember just hearing the zoom, zoom.
It's crazy. If you've never seen a fighter aircraft up close and then one flies by, you're just like, wow. Like, my ears and my whole body, and it's nuts. And then I think with the teams, of the demonstration teams, to see jets fly at like 400 miles an hour, just 18 inches or 2 feet from each other, is just this
Insane.
insane demonstration of precision and excellence and teamwork. And we really go around to showcase that to the American public, right? That's
Yeah.
inspirational. It generates patriotism. It inspires an entire generation of kids. It inspires people to want to serve in the military. There's
Yeah.
just so many cool things that it does. And so I got to do that mission for 3 years, including through the pandemic, which was a strange time to be doing that job. It was coming to an end either way, and I kind of had a decision to make what I was gonna do next: stay in the Air Force, continue flying F-16s, but back in a combat capacity, or leave the military and do something else.
Why was it going to end?
So usually the demo teams, the Thunderbird specifically, is only a 2-year assignment.
Okay.
So every winter, half of the pilots flying the 6 jets are leaving and half are new. So it's like a 50% turnover rate each year.
Okay.
The reason it's like that is because the schedule is insane. We were on the road 240 days per year. It's really hard on your
Wow.
body. Super high G, which for people that don't know, 1 G is the force of gravity. So,
Like your face is just.
say you weigh 100 pounds under 1 G, which is what you weigh with the force of gravity. The F-16 can pull 9 times that. So you're experiencing, if you weighed 100 pounds, you're experiencing weighing 900 pounds on your joints, on your muscles, on your spine. And none of us are up there weighing 100 pounds. And we're flying 10 times a week, some weeks. We're hitting that every flight. We're hitting lower G forces several times, 6 times the force of gravity, 7 times the force of gravity. It's really hard on your body. It's like natural wear and tear that happens from aging, just on a super accelerated time frame. And so I was dealing with a lot of joint pain, especially like back pain
Yeah.
and neck pain. So anyway, normally a 2-year assignment. The only reason I was there for 3 is because of the pandemic. That was
Right.
such
Okay.
a weird year. We didn't hire new people, and they asked us all to stay.
Wow. Okay. So you're making this decision now. You're like, do I stay? Do I go? What's the move? And then what was that kind of light bulb moment that gave you the wisdom of this is the path?
Yeah, it took a little bit of exploring. So a few things had happened. I knew I was going to leave active duty, and there were a few reasons. One of them was the physical wear and tear that I was experiencing. I had also met my husband at the beginning of my Thunderbird assignment. We had gotten married my first year on the team, which was quite the whirlwind year. Um,
Wow.
he has a son, so I now had a stepson.
Did you meet him through this world or was it totally separate?
Oh, no, I met him on Bumble, which is a
Oh,
great
shut
story.
up.
Bumble's success story. Nothing like trying to create a Bumble profile when you're a female Thunderbird pilot living in Las Vegas.
Yeah. What was that like?
Vegas is a weird town to date in general,
Super transient, right? Like most people are traveling through.
for sure, and I'm not in the entertainment industry. I'm not in, like, the
You're not a
industry
bottle
of
girl.
right, of staying up all night or being down on the strip. I'm in the military, so it's just, like, so away from that world.
I've been on Bumble in Vegas before. It's an interesting place.
Yeah, for sure, and I grew up in the Midwest in a small town, like 4,000 people in northern Wisconsin,
Yeah.
and I've spent the last decade at that point living all over the world, flying jets, and it's just like, how do you find someone to date in this city? And you're in this position where you're not a celebrity, but you're, like, kind of a celebrity,
Yeah.
and there's, like, no women in this role. I was the 4th to fly in the demo in the team's history, and the team had been around since 1953.
What other apps were you on?
Oh, I'm trying to think. I think I was on Match for a little
Okay.
while, and then what was the one that was supposed to be, like, really concierge and all, like, really top tier people, but
Raya.
it was just all the same profiles that you saw on every other.
Raya's the one that's like the celebrities, but not really. It's the one where everyone from like LA, New York, Vegas are kind of in that space, but it's a shit app. I think I've met one person off of it ever.
It was just a weird time to try to online date, and then I met John, and we went on a date, and he's from a small town in Indiana. He had been in the Marines. Like, it was just a breath of fresh air after all these weird dates I
Yeah.
had been on where people were like, "Wait, you're a fighter pilot? What is that like?" And they turned into fans immediately, and I was like,
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, that's not the vibe here.
"This is weird." Yeah, and so we got married 6 months later,
Wow. That's
and so
so
I have
cool.
a new stepson who I just turned 6, he's 12 now. We're still married in case anyone was wondering. Um, so a lot had changed in my life in the last 3 years, right? Like,
Wow. Yeah.
I now have a family. My body's been really beat up over the last 3 years, so I'm
Totally.
not really looking to move every 2 to 3 years anymore. My husband was very established here. My stepson's mom is here, which makes moving not really
Right.
an option anymore.
Right.
Um, and then the other piece, and I think this is the piece we're gonna end up focusing on, is that at some point during those 3 years, I think really during that 3rd year post-pandemic as everything kinda came back to life, at some point I realized that the cool flying was still cool, but it had become kind of mundane, which people
Yeah.
are gonna be like, "How is that possible?" What I really liked, what kept me motivated, were these moments that I would have where someone would come up to the autograph line after a show and drag their daughter up there, like their 6 or 7-year-old, and put her in front of me and be like, "Look, she just flew that jet that you just watched." And that little girl, the wheels in her head would turn, and I would see the light bulb moment happen. And you could see it in her eyes where she just realized that someone that looked like her just did that thing that seemed like superhero-esque. And I
Yeah.
could see this moment where what that kid saw as possible for them in the world just got bigger.
Oh, I
And that was
love that.
the coolest thing I got to do. And I was like, "I don't wanna go back to just flying and leave that behind. How can I keep doing that?"
Because if you're leaving the Thunderbirds, that
Yeah,
element of it would go away. Now you
that's
were just
gone.
in active duty and that's
Yep.
not even a part of it. Yeah.
And so everything was telling me it's time to make a change.
Right.
And so, okay, I know I'm gonna leave active duty. I probably wanna be done flying high G aircraft, so I'm gonna leave the F-16. Most of my peers who leave go fly for the airlines. That's like the natural transition.
Mhm.
Flying for the airlines can be a great career, but it didn't get me excited, right?
Yeah.
That fulfillment was really lacking there. And again, I didn't think I would get to have that impact. That impact is what I was really loving. And I realized that I had this unique opportunity with this timing coming off of 3 years. I had built this platform on social media with no intention of doing anything with it afterwards. But I found myself at this pivot point just being like, I can impact a lot of people's lives for with good using
Right.
this platform. I don't know exactly what that looks like yet, but I'm gonna go all in on it. And the tipping point, and this sounds kind of crazy. The tipping point was a private all boys high school reached out to me asking if I would speak, and it was far enough in the future that it was after my time on the Thunderbirds would be over.
Right.
So I could say yes to it because I was like, okay, cool. If I'm leaving the Air Force, that is after that date. Let's see what this looks like. And that was
Right.
kind of the catalyst that had me looking into the speaking industry, being like, what does this business look like? What do people get paid? What's the demand? And I was like, I think I can create a business here. I think I can tell my story here. I don't know what part of my story I'm going to tell,
Yeah.
but let's go. And so I said yes to that event. I signed a contract for it. I put in the paperwork to leave active duty. I hadn't even written a speech yet.
So this is all by yourself. You don't have a team, you don't have anybody
Yeah.
helping you. This is just you being like, fuck it, let's find out.
Exactly. Yeah,
Great.
100%.
Love it.
Turns out if you're all in, you get shit done really fast.
Yeah.
I don't know that everyone should take that approach. There is obviously risk involved there. I think there's a couple things that allowed me to do that. My husband had a great job, right? I wasn't going to end up homeless.
Right.
Like I had some security blanket there. But I also have 13 years at that point of soft skills, of
Totally.
resilience and figuring stuff out and communication skills and networking and all these things that I built that I had complete faith that I was going to make it work.
100%. I feel like one of the biggest pieces of advice that I hear over and over about anybody that's living any version of their dream life, it's just that you're never going to feel ready. I heard this quote recently that blew my mind where it's like, ready isn't a feeling, it's a choice that you make. So if you're sitting there
Yeah.
being like, I don't feel ready, I don't feel ready, it's like, yeah, you won't. You're never going to feel ready. Nobody feels ready. I was watching some videos of you talking about even your experience, like in the fighter pilots and doing all these things, feeling that imposter syndrome, feeling like, okay, I'm here, but do I even deserve to be here? And am I good enough? Those are such human things.
And the funny thing is that at that time, I was so convinced that I was the only person experiencing them.
Right. And that's why I think it's so important to use your platform to tell people, like, hey, you see this really cool thing that I'm doing. I was scared shitless. I had no idea what
Yep.
I was doing. I was fucking around and finding out.
And that is honestly why I speak on what I do. People see my byline and they're like, oh, Thunderbird pilot, former fighter pilot. She's going to get up there and talk about teamwork and excellence and integrity and all these things. And sure, that is inherently woven into the message
For
because of my
sure.
background. But what I talk about is self doubt and imposter syndrome and the fear of failure. And it has been super cathartic for me. It feels
Yeah.
so authentic. It feels so good to talk about these things that have been there my entire career, but like this super secret thing that no one could know about. But B, it's so well received. Every single event, someone comes up and is like, I feel like you wrote that for me. I needed to hear that now. And because I heard it, I know what I'm going to do with it. And then they don't just feel inspired, they go do something with it.
I love that.
And the people that have followed up and told me what they've gone and done, it's so cool.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you, do you get emails of people being like, "Hey, because you said this, I did that"?
Yeah, several. I mean, for speaking stuff, I had a guy who saw me speak, I think it was like 9 months prior at one event, and then he was at another event I was at, and he was maybe in his 50s, and he was like, "I had always wanted to get my doctorate, and I was really close. I only needed to go back to school for like 2 years,
Mhm.
but I felt like I was too old and that it was just really daunting. And I saw you speak at event XYZ because there's a moment towards the end of the speech, I have everyone close their eyes, and much like you did at the beginning, I have them place their hands on their chest,
Yeah.
and I have them think of something that they've been really wanting to go after, but they haven't told
Mm.
anyone about, and that they've been scared to go after because they might fail. And it like it'll pop into people's minds immediately,
Yeah,
like,
they
'cause
know,
I've
they know what it is.
and I've kind of paved the road for them by being really vulnerable in my speech and talking about how the Thunderbirds was that thing for me for a really long time, and I never told anyone about it and all this stuff. And so he said that popped into his mind immediately. And so fast forward 9 months, and he was like 8 months into his doctorate program.
Wow.
And so he was like, I'm doing it, and I knew exactly what it was, and that was the catalyst.
That's
There was
gotta be one
another
of the
lady,
best feelings ever,
'cause
like
you're like changing people's lives
Yeah.
by standing on a stage for 30 minutes or 45 minutes, and it's scary to get on the stage by yourself and hold an audience for that long, and it's vulnerable, and it was really scary at first. Now I enjoy it, but it was so scary at first.
Yeah.
But I can see the rewards of it, not the financial rewards, like the impact rewards. And there was another lady who her supervisor kept telling her she needed to put her name in the hat for this promotion that was available, and she just didn't believe in herself enough. The speech, she was like, "I gotta do it," and she got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one more, this is my favorite. So I did this online virtual course, the Badass Masterclass, and I ran a cohort of it last year. It's like 6 weeks, 6 modules. It's all about dealing with your inner critic and mindset stuff and like your wingman, your support system, and all these things. Someone just reached out to me this week and he was like, "Hey, delayed success story, but I think he's like 65 years old, 63 years old. He's like, over the last 9 months, I have lost 65 pounds.
Wow.
I have started going to the gym. I'm working with a trainer." And he had his before picture, and then his after picture from like recently is him doing a Tough Mudder.
Oh my
And
god.
he's like jacked. And he's like, "I would have never had the courage to start going to the gym and focusing on my health and my fitness had I not done that course." And I'm like, in your 60s, losing 65 pounds and making fitness a
Yeah.
priority can add
Massive.
decades to your life.
Yeah.
I took a screenshot of it and I'm like,
And you're like, "Because of something
this,
I said? Because of what
this
I"
is why I do this. Like
Yeah.
that course didn't sell thousands of seats in it. Like
Yeah.
60 people took it. It wasn't a massive moneymaker.
But if one person has a success story like that, I feel like it's all worth it.
For sure. And we had a private Facebook group and he chimed in with that. And then 5 more people, because it had been kind of quiet because the cohort had ended quite a while ago. 5
Mhm.
more people chimed in with like massive wins that they've had. And it was just like, it
Wow.
kind of revived it. And it's a good reminder because there are so many trolls on the internet
Yeah.
that want to crap on what I'm doing for some reason.
You ever, like, click on the profiles of the people that are talking shit, and you're just like, "Who are you?"
And it's so easy logically to be like, cool. You have your own issues if this is what you spend
Right.
your time doing. But also when it ends up being a ton of people on a regular basis, it does start to bother you sometimes. Like
Totally, totally.
all of those moments where I'm just like, delete, block, screw you. And then I'll have those moments where I'm like, does everyone think what I'm doing is bullshit and that I'm just peddling stuff that doesn't matter and that I'm only doing it to make money for myself and that I'm cashing in on the Thunderbird brand for personal profit? You know what I mean? You kind of will go through
Yeah.
those cycles. And then I have a story like that of that guy losing all that weight and changing his life. And I'm like, no, I've had a massive positive impact. I
Right.
just keep forging ahead.
You just need to remind yourself sometimes. I feel like when the haters start hating, I loved what you said when you were making the decision as to what to step into next. You had what most people would consider a dream job, a dream situation, and you just felt like, I'm feeling called towards expansion and a new direction. And I feel like I went through a really similar moment when I left my career in Hollywood. Same thing. Most people would be like, wow, you're living the dream life. Why would you stop? And it was like this visceral feeling in my gut that was like, you're meant to be doing something else. Follow that intuition, follow that feeling. And I feel like those stories I've had, obviously at a very different level, but I've had people reach out to me saying like something that I posted on social media made them do XYZ. And same thing. I have a whole folder in my phone. I screenshot it. I think about it for
Yeah.
days, weeks, months. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to keep going. I don't know if you have a similar thing. I created a folder in my phone of gratitude or reflections like that, that especially in those moments when I'm doubting myself and when I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? Nobody cares. Why am I doing this? I'll go back to those and I'll be like, okay, all right, this is why.
Yeah, I call that the sunshine folder, and I've
Yeah.
encouraged a lot of my friends to create those because
Yeah.
we, like, all have those moments. I'm like, "You should make yourself a sunshine folder on your phone."
I love it. Yeah. I screenshot everything.
Because I think about, like, stuff is, like, energy renewing or like, draining, whether it's a
Uh,
conversation with someone or it's, like, that comment that you read or whatever it is, and sometimes you could see a negative comment pop up and it triggers you and makes you so mad and you dwell on it. But if you open that and you scroll through those real quick, it can have the same impact the opposite direction. We're so biased to dwell on the negatives,
totally.
which I hate that about us as humans.
Well, it's the same thing with manifestation, right? Our brain doesn't know don't. So if we're thinking about, I don't want this, I don't want this, all your brain hears is, I'm focusing on this, 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 this. And so when you're shifting the way in which you're manifesting, instead of putting your focus on what you don't want, really just focusing on what you do and putting your energy and attention there so that it can flow in that direction.
Yeah, it's like obstacles versus opportunities, right?
Mhm.
I know we haven't talked about the book yet, but one of the things I talk about in there is creating your own luck.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is just shifting the situations you put yourself in, showing up with optimism and curiosity, and how you view things where opportunities that you would have just not seen before, or
Yeah.
you would have ignored or thought that you weren't qualified for, now you're paying attention to, and now you're optimistic about, now you're curious about, and that's how you get lucky.
Curiosity. I think curiosity is such a big piece of it. And I talk about this on a lot of the episodes as well, of saying yes to things and letting that unfold. Just leaning in, leaning with curiosity, being open and being curious and just letting it flow opens the doors to so many crazy experiences. I want to go back to, so you got invited by this all boys school to go do this speech.
Yeah.
You'd never spoken before. You didn't have a team. You didn't have anything. Like, how did that experience pivot into where you're at now and this whole journey that you're on?
Yeah, so I sat down, I'm like, "I have a date on the calendar, they are paying me what feels like a ton of money to me coming off of being paid by the government my whole life," and I was like, "I need a speech." So now I know that there's some techniques that you should use when you wanna tell a story or write a speech. I just sat down literally with a blank Word document and started typing. That's generally not the recommended technique, but it did work, and I sat there and I was like, "Okay, I'm talking to high schoolers, but what were the pinch points in my career where I, like, just felt like I was crawling along by my fingernails, like I was just uphill the whole way. What do I wish I knew? What big things happened that would be unique, compelling stories? Things happened in the jet that will have people on the edge of their seat, but personally as well, that will be relatable. And so I wrote this speech and it was 45 minutes long. And crazily enough, here we are 2.5 years later, and it has been edited and things have been cut, little things have been added. I went to an 8-month long speaking school, but the bones of the speech are the same.
Yeah.
Like, the core message is the same. The core stories are the same because I think I sat down with this intention of what do people really need to hear? What is the human experience that so many people struggle with? And it worked. And I think starting with that point and not being like, I should talk about excellence. Like,
Right.
not thinking about, like, what do people expect from someone in the military, but instead
Right.
thinking about what feels the most true to me and what do I think could have the most value and impact to people and what will feel the most authentic and relatable to them. Just set the speech up for success. And so I gave that one. I was so nervous. Oh my gosh. It was to 400 people, so that was a lot right out the gate. But these are teenage boys, which
Right.
honestly, now having spoken to a lot of adults, teenagers are worse to speak to. So I was
Y
probably right to be worried. Um, so that headmaster at that school gave me a chance and believed in me. And I actually went back to that school this December and got to speak there again, which was really cool.
That's awesome.
And then a few weeks later, someone at a major bank reached out and said, "Hey, we have a meeting a week from now in Denver for our leaders for our wealth management team. Would you like to come speak?" And I had this moment of sheer terror because it was in a week. I had only spoken at this boys' school.
Right.
And I remember, and this is one of the things I talk about in my actual speech. I had this moment of this is sheer excitement that someone's reaching out and wants to pay me to do this. This is the whole point. Immediately followed by like, I'm so not ready to speak at this level. But what I had learned, and one of the things that I try to teach other people, is that I was able to recognize that, zoom out, and instead of letting the fear take over, I was like, okay, this is a normal reaction because I haven't done this before. We're going to
Right.
say yes. And then we're going to take the next week and we're going to work our butts off and prepare as much as possible. And we're not going to feel ready and we're going to feel nervous and we're going to go do it anyway.
Yep. Feel the fear and do it anyway, baby. That's my favorite.
And that was my first corporate client and I was so nervous. And so that was how it started. And then I think a big part of that though was I started building an audience on LinkedIn, and that platform, the other social media platforms are so saturated. It is just
Yeah.
like a competition for attention.
Right, right.
And especially personal development type content like I write doesn't tend to do super well unless you're like one of the really big names like Brene Brown or Mel Robbins or something like that. If I do a really dumb, funny reel with a voiceover that's like 7 seconds long, it will get 100,000 views.
Right.
If I do some like high production
Meaningful, like
video that's meaningful and telling this epic story, and it'll get like 10,000 views, and I'm just like, I hate this algorithm.
right?
But on LinkedIn, if you're building a business, which I am, a very small number of the people that are on there actually create content.
Yeah.
So if you're doing something that actually delivers value, that's not just a voiceover, silly dance or something that the other platforms like, it can get a lot of traction. And so
Mhm.
I started to grow on that platform. And very early on, I put on my profile there that I was a professional keynote speaker. And I put on my profile there that I was an aspiring author.
Did you put professional keynote speaker before you were a professional keynote speaker?
I had booked my first speech.
I've realized this with anything. I'm like, the way that you become anything is just by saying, I am this,
Absolutely, because no one's going to hire you as a speaker
if you're not
if
a
you don't
speaker.
say you're a speaker.
Yep.
And when I went to that 8-month-long speaking school, one of the first things they told people, they're like, if you are here, you are investing 8 months and a lot of money to be here. What does your byline on LinkedIn say? And for most people, it didn't say speaker at all. Or if it did, it was like listed way at the end. And they're like, if you want to do this regularly and get paid a lot of money to do it, y'all need to put that first.
Yeah.
So everyone's like moving it up because they're like, no one's going to take you seriously and pay you what you should be getting paid
If you're not a
if it's
speaker.
if it's an afterthought. And so
Mhm.
that was a key piece of advice that I got. Like, you got to look like you believe in yourself or no one else is going to believe in you.
Love that.
And then it was off to the races. So many people believed in me early on that it allowed me to start to be able to put people's logos on my website, right? Like
Yeah.
each of those people that believed in me, I could now put their logo as a customer. I could get testimonials. I had photos from those events. I was able to build a speaking reel by maybe like 9 months in or so. And so that first year, I clawed my way along. I did a lot of events for lower rates than the first one. And then a year from when I had started, things were really firing on all cylinders at that point. And then it's just been awesome since then. Highs and lows, but averaged out to awesome.
So now you're speaking. We have a book coming out. What does your life look like right now?
It's fairly unpredictable, which my husband's always like, could we get this to be like more consistent? And I would love that too, because I have months where I feel like I won the lottery. And then I have months where I'm like, I have no money coming in. Is this not what I should be doing? And every speaker I talk to says it's like that. It's very seasonal. So, like February, I have 6 speaking events. March, I think I'll have 8. That's a lot. That's a lot of different
Yeah.
cities to be in. January, I have 1. But it's just like that. And so I have times when I will do 3 in a week, and it is literally planes, trains, and automobiles. And I'm just like
Yeah.
praying to the travel gods that there's not a snowstorm
Yeah.
and that no flights get canceled. And then I have times in the summer, especially when not a lot of corporate events are happening, I might be home for a month straight. But me being me, I'm never chilling during that time. Instead,
Yeah.
I'm writing a whole book,
Right.
or I'm building a virtual course, or I'm planning a retreat. And once the book is launched and that goes well next year, who knows? Maybe I'll start a podcast. I don't know. I can't just be chill. I wish I could.
No, you don't. You've got a burning passion in your belly. When I was working with Glenn, it was the same thing. Even during the pandemic, even when there was no work coming in, it was such a masterclass in, okay, I have this dream, I have this vision. And even if there is no work, I'm going to generate work and I'm going to be busy all day, every day, making shit happen. That's how you do it. Like, it's the only way.
No, for sure. And that is what has led me to all the success I have had in the past. And I enjoy it, right? There's moments where I go a little bit too hard and I'm like, okay, we got to dial it back a smidge. I'm burned out,
Right,
but
right.
I enjoy chasing goals and the grind and the hustle and the wins and all of it.
If you had one piece of advice that you can give to somebody specifically who's aspiring to step into their dream reality, do you have one sort of thing that you would say to them?
Yeah. And it's something I say in my speech. It's something that I wrote in the book. It's something that you've said already. And it's that the key to progress is having the courage to start something, even when you don't feel ready, but believing yourself enough to know you will figure it out along the way.
Yeah,
That is it. Like, there are so many other little pieces of advice about finding mentors and dealing with stress and responding to things instead of reacting and
totally.
prioritizing things. But if we have to boil it down, it is just taking action, even when it feels scary, even when you don't feel ready. And that action can be like one tiny little thing. It doesn't have to blow up your whole life and be massive. It can be
Totally.
like the tiniest little step.
I absolutely love that. Well, I'd love to give you the opportunity now. If you want to plug anything, I'm going to put in the show notes of the podcast your social channels so people can
Okay.
find and connect with you. But if there's anything that you want to plug, this is your opportunity to do so.
Yeah. So I think Instagram is probably the best platform, which I know you'll have below, but it's Mace_Curran. All the book info will be there.
Great.
I have a lot going on, but this book, The Flip Side, How to Invert Your Perspective and Turn Fear into Your Superpower,
Love
talks
it.
about all of the things we have been talking about. I have a couple of kids' books that you can see behind me as well. But the latest book, The Flip Side, it's a 70,000 word, 270 page memoir slash personal development book with a major publisher. I've been working on it for over 2 years. The format is kind of like a story, some of them jaw dropping, some of them terrifying, some of them life changing for me. But then, really, like the lessons that I took from it or how I got through it and
Mhm.
translating those into tools that anyone can use.
Love
It is
that.
super vulnerable. There's some bonuses during pre-order time. So pre-orders are open right now. It doesn't come out till September because publishing, it's like the tortoise and the hare, and publishing is the tortoise. I don't know what the hare is, but it's not publishing. Pre-orders are so important to authors. It signals to retailers whether they're going to order the book and put it physically in stores, which is super cool. It's on the Target website, which I have this dream because it
Cool.
comes out in September, right? And I'm basic. So I have this dream of enough people pre-ordering on Target that Target picks it up to put it in the store, that I
Ah,
can walk into Target in the fall, because September, in boots and a sweater and go to Starbucks and get a pumpkin spice latte and
and get your
shuffle the
book.
aisle and see my book. Wouldn't that be the coolest, most basic fall girl thing ever to do?
I already see the reel. I see it in my head right now. I'm holding that vision for you. I'm calling that
Right?
in.
Manifest that. But macecurran.com/flipside, there's all these pre-order bonuses, and one of them is a preview of the first chapter.
Cool.
And it's going to be cool. I've had a few people already see it, and I've started to get emails with feedback, which is like, I would say it's like putting your baby out into the world, but it's like putting like a sneak peek of your baby out into the world, just like
Yeah.
their finger or something, like, oh, that baby's got a cute finger. And people are like, this is so good. I can't wait to read the rest. The first few emails to get positive feedback, because writing a book like this, where it's like half memoir, so you're really personal, is 90% excitement, 10% being terrified.
But that's where all the fun is. If you're not scared, is it even worth doing?
And I think that's just on brand with the message that we've been talking about this whole episode. Yeah. So all that being said, this is probably the biggest project I've ever worked on as far as length of time, amount of energy. I like to set big goals. My overall goal is to impact the most people, obviously, for it to get in the right people's hands where it will really impact them and change lives and do all the things of the people we talked about.
Mhm.
But as far as chasing goals and numbers and all those things, I want it to be a bestseller, right? So I
Fuck
have
yeah.
some specific number goals that could make it possibly a New York Times bestseller. So we're targeting those big goals. Odds not in your favor, but that's how my whole life's been. So please
But
pre-order my book.
but we're calling that in. I'm calling that in. I'm calling in the Target placement. I'm calling in New York Times bestseller. That's so exciting.
Tell your
So
friends.
stoked for you. You know
Order it for
what?
Christmas presents.
Do you know what? I might even put it on my podcast.
Put it on your podcast.
I might even tell the world all about it.
I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh my God. This has been so much fun. I'm like really upset that we're coming up on an hour because I want like 6 more to you talking to you and asking you questions. Your story is so amazing. I love your pivot. I love what you've done. And I love your drive and ambition to continue like impact. It's just having impact and taking your wisdom, taking your experience and sharing it with the world, and the way that you've been able to package your story. I mean, the impact that you've already had, it feels like you're at the beginning and you're already booming and taking off, which is so exciting.
Yeah, I feel like that so often. I lose perspective on how much has
Yeah,
happened in the last 3 years because I feel like I've been running at full sprint, and sometimes, like,
totally.
friends or family will be like, "Take a second to look at all that you've accomplished in the last 2.5 to 3 years." And then I look forward and I feel like I'm just getting
There's so much
started.
there's so much more, right?
There's
Like
so
there's
much
so much
more.
more.
Yes.
We're
So
going to be a New York Times bestseller, we're going to be product placement, and then the goalposts will move, and then
it
our
will.
aspirations are going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and that's so exciting. I did a guided meditation. I'm in a course right now, and we did our vision of what we're building and what we're creating, and then we did a zoom out of that's just here. Well, even what you're visioning and what your manifestation is, that's not the whole thing. Zoom out and what's the bigger vision, and
Yeah.
what you have is just the vision within the vision. And everybody was like, whoa, that's not even the whole thing. That's just a part of it.
It's crazy when you really can zoom out and get that perspective.
And you're like, okay, let's fucking go. And I think you said in one of your posts, what was it, like the next closest alligator,
Yeah.
where it's like that can feel so overwhelming to be like, okay, I have all these dreams, all these ambitions, all these things I want to do, but it's like, cool, but what's one thing that I can do right now,
Yep.
today, in this moment, recording this podcast, like whatever it is, that one little action that's going to be the baby step that's going to take you to the next level, to the next level.
Yep.
And then you're going to look back in 3 years and be like, whoa, I did that. Whoa.
Right, there's a time and place for each one of those things, right? Like, having that vision that you keep going back to, that keeps you on track, that you can
Yeah.
use as the litmus test to be like, "Is this action moving me towards that or away from that?"
Mhm.
But not letting that be the only thing, because it can be completely overwhelming, and the progress towards it, you can lose sight of it if you're that zoomed out.
Yeah.
So you gotta go back and forth between, like, the super zoomed in on the closest alligator, like, that's what you're physically taking action on, but
Right.
I call it the 30,000-foot view, where you're like, "Okay, let's zoom out and, like,
Right.
take some perspective on what we're doing."
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so, so much for coming on and
For
sharing
sure.
your wisdom. I'm so excited, guys. Pre-order the flip side. Thank you for listening.
Yep.
Go follow Mace on Instagram. Please reach out if you have any feedback, questions, comments. Always love to hear from you guys. And we'll see you on the next one. Thanks so much. Bye.